trying to get across at this summit? More than ever, it's really to hear from your peers to talk about two things. One is that you have to make bigger decisions about your time and your resources. Staying in the status quo and just sort of working off of the tasks you had before, we all feel the pressure. It's no longer possible. And so we wanted to share some of the experiences of your peers around what they've tried, what's failed, and we'll try and get into a few of the things that didn't work so well, so we all feel a bit more, take a deep breath that it does happen to everybody, and the things that have succeeded. So that's really what we're trying to get across over the course of the day. So what's the context of the decisions that you have? You have to be really explicit about your direction as a marketing team in Europe, because of the risk. You have limited resources. No one's budget really went up that much this year. You've got more confusing priorities, and everyone's forcing a must-try idea on you. And so in the tactics, you're tasked with data acquisition, with content marketing, with your ad network targeting, telemarketing, online lead gen events. Just get that done, right? But meanwhile, make sure you're communicating completely all the time with the sales team, the sales VP, the marketing operations team, which a team that didn't exist a few years ago, the regional VPs, and an agency if you have them. And also now you actually have to have, maybe not a relationship, but you have to know exactly where things are going in your marketing automation stack with the CRM tools. And if you bought an ABM tool, then you've got to integrate with that as well. And then, this is all with sort of initiatives running across it of ABM, sales qualified lead development, and maybe you've got a VAR program. So this is a lot for, what we know are quite limited teams. And so maybe the task that we set out at this show or at this event is to say, how are you going to prioritize to get the most important things done? Period, right? That's, what are the most important things that you're going to be judged on, that you're going to be remembered for, and how do we get you to redirect away from the things that simply nobody cares about or are not generating value, and have you make those hard choices about redirecting your effort. That's what we've been working with customers with over the last several years. So, this is data-driven event. So, we think data is an essential infrastructure component, and most people will say that. And we'll say that quality is the quality definition is the key to that investment. So, if we're going to reshape your time and your budget for a new world, what do we need to think about? Well, the good news is that data is cheaper than ever. You got people that scrape data. You have people that telemarket. You got ad network surge data. I mean, the prices on everything has fallen to a really incredible level. However, what the problem is that is really just forced any problems of data quality upstream to much more expensive resources, right? It's going upstream to the sales reps who have big salaries and big quotas, and they have big mouths, right? All of these things mean that they are going to, if the data is bad and is backed up to them, you will find out about it, right? But there's also your time, right? And the time that you have is that you're investing in systems, people, and your budget, right? There's the time of just, if you get data, you have to spend time training the sales team, training the marketing ops team, talking with the sales VPs around what is this data. And then there's regular coordination with them around it. That's a huge overhead of time, of your time. And if you're gonna put your stamp on data, then you say, I'm willing to spend this much extra time on that. And then when you think about how you're going to structure it into these other systems, there's a huge amount of work that's like what is this data's purpose? What is it good for? What are we going to use it for in the future? I mean, anyone that's had a longer conversation with the marketing ops teams, comes away with a lot of respect for the process and maybe a lot of frustration. So when you're making decisions about the data that goes in, you have to recognize, where is this going and how much time am I going to spend in this data, and what do I really want to invest in? And then, if I layer on, I'll get to some, answers or our thoughts in a bit, but the ABM movement creates the small number pressure. And that makes it all even harder, which is that before, the simple math is you had 10,000 names, you write a really good email, you get a good lead acquisition rate of 1%, 100 leads, right? Now we go to ABM, right? We're only going after these accounts, and you've got 200 names. A 1% click-through rate to get 100 leads means 50 emails. Like 50 emails to get there. I mean, so when you have small numbers and you're focused on ABM, a lot of things you have to have, as many numbers as you can to count, the quality has to be good, and your emails have to screen. So all of these things create this pressure on the quality of the data. And we've recently done a little bit of research on our own and some asking as customers, and we're advanced this idea of like, you all sort of have, and many of you have told us you have this problem of data dead weight, which is that you have a database that is filled with junk, right? And it has been, God knows where the data came from, what event, how many years ago, where did you buy it from, what was the source? And it makes everyone feel good, right? I've got 10,000 names in my database. But that, or a lot of people tell us that that data doesn't do anything. And in fact, it hurts you, right? It literally weighs down all your acquisition rates, all your click-through rates. You can't even see what's working because there's this pool of data that doesn't respond, doesn't opt out, doesn't click, doesn't do anything. So it clouds your vision of it. And so that we put up, we're going to link to a few of the blog posts and the research we've done around that to help clarify that. So these are some of the issues that you face on the data side. So when we look at the data side, we really think about the first part of it is that the quality of the activity that begins where you trigger the data is really the key ingredient to quality. And so, when we do tests and we find we're going to take two people, one person's active on storage, and we've done this across multiple topics, and one person's interested in backup for virtualization, a subtopic to there. If we can align a call, a vendor email on that, and we can to that subtopic on backup virtualization, we get double the click-through rate, right? And because we know the signal is at a granular level that helps you, right? And we're not going to dive into this too much on this concept, but the discussion we have is that we really think there's only about 3 sources of quality data, of quality trigger activity that are on the web. The first is your site, right? If they come and visit your site, that's really good. If they've searched your term in Google and you're spending on Google AdWords, there's no doubt that that's really a good source. And the third is content that is specifically on your topic area, whether it's on a specialist blog, a blog you write. TechTarget's invested an incredible amount of money to get and time and expertise to make sure we're writing content at the level of backup or virtualization or data analytics for CRM to make sure we're getting that signal at that level. And the more controversial thing I say is that the rest of it is just not worth your time. Anything that is more general than that, you will spend chasing, trying to figure out what they're doing, and you simply don't have the time and the resources to figure out what that signal is. Is this quality in the data? The other part that we find in the data beyond the quality of the signal is the recency. And this is another thing we've just done some research on and looked at our own database, is that if you take, on a timeline and you say, this is the moment in time when we saw their activity begin on research, and then we start emailing that person at different intervals of time, their interest in that topic goes down like that, right? And if we get them in the first month that they're active versus 6 months later, the click-through rate is 5 times as high, right? So getting the data and when someone is interested in that topic and getting on top of them immediately is probably the most important thing you can do to try and help data working. And we're going to explore some of these concepts in the panels today. And then you have these additional problems of maintaining the insight around the data. If you have the context of the data that you've found and you can relay that to the marketing automation system, to the salespeople, a big part of the marketing job, as we've been talking with customers, is that you're enabling other people and systems to do their job effectively. But you have to maintain the context of the data. And even as I say this, I know this is like kind of a fuzzy idea. But the idea that, this is a person that clicked on a storage for virtualization website and our asset on that topic, and making sure that that data is carried throughout the system means that the marketing automation system can act effectively. It means the rep can make an effective call. And they all have to know what the context of it is. So that is one of the challenges so it isn't just become, I had this activity, I threw it into the Marketo system, and frankly, we lost all the context. You lose a lot of the investment levels there. So that's one of the things that we're going to explore across the day about how do you actually retain that context so that the intelligent people on your team actually take advantage of that over time. So we're evolving to try and help you with that, right? So this was the lead file that in 2007 when we opened the London office, this was the really advanced technology we were giving people, right? We were really proud of this. Not long after that, we said, well, let's tell you a little bit more about this person, about their concept. And we, said what were the assets they're looking at, what were the, what were the different types of content that they looked at, and how could we get this to the sales team, trying to offer them some transparency. So this was state of the art around 2010. And then, most of you have come up with, what we're talking about, Priority Engine, which was now we present to people, add an account, everyone that's interested in a topic, and then giving their subtopic interests so that the rep, so the marketing automation system, so the marketers can know what people are interested in. So this is really moving fast. That you're at software and hardware companies, right? When you have something that is important to customers, if you put a lot of investment behind it, you'll become known for it. And so TechTarget's really working hard behind the scenes to develop what is a data product for people. So we're investing really heavily on that. So we're glad you're joining us on that journey. So, what we're going to start about today is about how do you use this, data-driven marketing, and specifically its application in 3 areas that you've said are the most important for you. So we took your feedback and said, what are you trying to do with? The first is, marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead development. I mean, that is at the core. You're trying to do that. You're trying to become part of the pipeline development team. How can you do that? The other is about how are you going to add value directly to the sales team. What do we mean by that? Well, you tell us various things, but we know that simply your success is innately tied to the sales team's success and their perception of the value. I mean, that's, putting it nicely, is like they have to feel like you're offering value to them. And so we're going to try and elicit some ways that your peers are doing that with data to change, just to really strengthen it and to increase the perception. And then we'll talk about account-based marketing over the course of time. So, I'm going to quickly run through some ideas that hopefully will trigger some, thoughts as we go into the panels about how people are using specifically Priority Engine and the ROI they're seeing in these areas. So, when we talk about the, MQL and SQL development, what we find is that quality and volume is really the key there. Making sure you have critical mass of the right quality so that the marketing automation systems are more valuable when you're doing it more effectively. So to give you an idea of some things, like we had a small software company that had no LDRs to follow up on leads, and they had a super long sales cycle. It was only field sales. And their existing database was in terrible shape, so they needed to refresh the data. So they used Priority Engine to, over the course of several quarters to refresh their data. And they're doing their email marketing at open rates of 20% and click-through rates in double figures. I put it in double figures because that's almost an unbelievable number, right? But it is like sort of the idea of you getting fresh data to use it. And a SaaS company was using it just for rep emails, and they were having a 100% delivery rate, which was nothing they'd never had before because the quality of the data they bought was so terrible on the email side. Their open rates were 14% and their click-through rates were 1%. So as they started looking at like, how am I going to use email as a tool for pipeline development, they used the Priority Engine and they're getting these metrics. Now, how does that convert to pipe? We all know it's going to take some time. But in the early metrics, as people use it, this is how the results they're seeing. As we talk about, becoming a strategic partner in sales, there is no single way to do this, and it really is going to depend on your organization. But just to trigger a few of the ideas, useful context for direct-to-sales appointment setting. So, one security company that we work with had one BDM, and that BDM was just working on non-named accounts. And so they use the insight from the account view in the first week to set up 2 appointments, right? So they could say, this is the account, we know nothing about it, but from the TechTarget data, I've got enough to go out and pursue that appointment setting. So appointment setting off of the data ends up being something we didn't quite expect was going to be used for, but it ends up being important. Territory development. So this is an area that some people are in, some people are not. So we had a hardware company, or the division of a very large integrated technology company, that they had a territory that had not been worked in 6 months, right? Because of higher sales. So all these accounts essentially had nothing. And the territory was not big. And so they took Priority Engine, loaded the list of accounts, and they found 100 net new contacts at those accounts that have been active on that hardware technology in the last 90 days. And then the marketer, working hand in glove with the rep, had a really thoughtful email effort, which we can talk about in another point in time, and in the first month generated 5 face-to-face appointments and 5 event registrations off of just that territory, right? Because they looked at the data, they knew the fresh activity had happened, and they could roll it out. A networking company loaded their into Priority Engine their named account list, and they had 34 active accounts and found 50 net new prospects. And this scenario is working out with customers that right now, if we look at the back end of our customers' implementations, they've created over 100 target profiles have been created that are just individual rep territories. Like, I want an update on this rep's territory. You know, what are the new contacts? What's the new activity? So it's not just for marketing, it's for individual reps. Now, this is not for everyone. This is just giving some ideas of how people are using it. We found that it helps to change the relationship with sales. So, some people are starting to use it and say, let's take a look at the 10s, 20s, and 30s, like the sort of pipelines of values that are, I don't know if this is a real deal. I don't know if this is an opportunity. Well, let's take it and prioritize it with external data. Let's see which one of the 10s, 20s, and 30s is showing spiking activity on TechTarget. So you can start to say, how am I going to take our internal data and validate it with external? And you start to get some of this feedback that the LDRs are loving the data, and then in some cases we've got some really good ROI numbers, which will, a 23.5x pipeline value to the Priority Engine investment. On ABM, ABM and sales, this really overlaps with one another, right? There's very tight relationship. I'm sure as anyone that's engaged in an ABM effort, at some level, who is doing something around ABM? Yeah. It's tightly integrated with what sales is. So it's hard to quite tease these out into just pure marketing activities. But, as an example, one problem is contacts at the accounts I'm going after, attacking that kind of small number problem I talked about before. And so they loaded their named account list into it, and they found 1,800 new contacts on business intelligence on the first day that they ran it across EMEA. And then so they're running content with TechTarget so that we say whenever there's activity at these accounts, I want my content automatically emailed to them through TechTarget, and I'm going to have my reps do appointment setting off of this. That a niche hardware company that there was someone just working on 40 financial services accounts, they found 400 net new contacts. Now they're big banks, but you get the idea of how you're helping them with net new contacts. And they're trying to do it to transform how our customers or the reps are talking about going after the account. An example was one rep had 3 guys at Experian. Like, these are my guys. They know what's going on. And then on the technology subject they had, we ran that account against the TechTarget data and found 30 people in Priority Engine that were active on the topic of their technology. And as a rep, this is sort of giving the sales director a chance to give him fuel to say, you think you've got this account covered, you are nowhere close, right? There are so many different ways to do that. And that, when you start to partner with your sales VP or sales director in a different way, puts you in a very different category of partner. We're starting to find some reps, some customers that are loading the accounts that have visited their website into their Priority Engine to say, if you visit the website, who does TechTarget know there? They're loading their installed base list and saying, I want to take a look at that, my installed base list, and see who's there in activity. The idea that you're going to have this interplay of data with your own internal data with external data is, a really, really interesting time.